have a little bit of sad news, and that was the passing of Jim Marshall on Tuesday. He was 87 years old. Um, just a Vikings legend. Like, he played 19 years with us, 20 years in total. He played his first year with the Cleveland Browns, and then he was part of the draft for the expansion of the Vikings. And I don't know if he played every single game for the Vikings in that time, but he played 282 straight games, which was an NFL record that was broken, I believe, in 2005 by Jeff Fiegels, who's a punter. So I don't give that the same amount of credit that you got a defensive lineman playing 282 straight games, including 270 straight starts. He was a part of the Purple Eaters. He played in 4 Super Bowls. Maybe that has something to do with the reason that he has been omitted from the Hall of Fame unjustly. They didn't keep sacks back in those days, but people have gone back and done the research, look at the game logs, watch the tape, and he's credited with 130 and a half sacks, which would put him at 22 overall. Mm-hmm. So I think everybody around him with that sack total is in the Hall of Fame. You got John Randall in the Hall of Fame, Chris Doleman in the Hall of Fame. They don't have 130 sacks. They didn't play 282 straight games. Like, he was the NFL Iron Man. And Rinaldi would love this. He is one player who had his jersey retired. The number 70 cannot be worn by any Minnesota Viking. That was retired in 1999, and I was actually at that game at the Metrodome. And a little bit of a cool story about that is after the Vikings had beat the Chargers in that game, it was Jeff George against Jim Harbaugh, so that was pretty cool. But after the game, my dad wasn't ready to leave, and he had a few beers, so he just wanted to stay. We were the last ones in there, and we walked all the way down to as far as you could walk to the wall. And my dad was like asking security, "Can I just go out there and please touch the end zone just one time? Can I go touch the end zone?" And they wouldn't let him. They're like, "No, sorry, we have people who pay to do that kind of stuff." But then out came this big old man walking towards us. It was Jim Marshall. He was getting ready to do an interview about his number being retired. He came over and talked to us and got to shake his hand. Biggest hand I've ever come across. Like, he shook my arm. I shook his finger. But he was really nice. He talked to us, for a few minutes while they were setting up for the interview. And, the security was actually being cool about it since he was talking to us. And then, once he went away, we got escorted out. But, yeah, I actually did get to meet Jim Marshall. So that's a memory that I have in my Viking fandom. I know none of us were really around or watching football to know him while he played. But Jim Marshall's a name as a Viking fan that you hear every season. His name always comes up for one reason or another. Do you guys have any thoughts when you hear the name Jim Marshall?
Yeah, I think that if Alan Page had never existed on that Purple People Eater team, everybody would be giving him the same amount of reverence as Alan Page gets, because he really was. I mean, they were all monsters. But he was just pure greatness. And it's unfortunately that he made one mistake in his career. It really is, because he's great. He was a fantastic player.
Yeah, you're right. It reminds me of my dad, right? Jim Marshall is my dad's favorite player, Vikings player of all time. And he constantly says about our defenses this past couple of years, Purple People Eaters, baby. I can hear him on the phone right now telling me, screaming and being all happy about it. And I'm like, you can't omit Jim Marshall from the Hall of Fame when you have Alan Page, and next to Alan Page's name, it's in Carl Eller's name, it says part of the Purple People Eaters. You need the entire group of Purple People Eaters into the Hall of Fame. And not just because they're omitting Jim Marshall, they need to bring in Gary Larson also. If you're going to put that famous defensive name into the Hall of Fame next to those great players, you need to add the other two that formed that Purple People Eater defense.
What about you, Shaq? Anything come to mind when you hear about Jim Marshall and the stories about him?
So I'll bring up the story of how I found out about him. Was I know NFL films, they like to bring up, the old films back in the day before, that you had YouTube or all these highlights on ESPN. They showed when, Jim Marshall ran the wrong way, and they had all the other players talk about it. And then you also had, I believe they did a Missing Ring series about the Vikings in the 70s. So, I wasn't allowed to see it, but, just hearing the stories of how the team felt like a family back in the day, and how they was this close to winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think it's a travesty that he's not into the Hall of Fame, and I think it's actually a bummer that he'll probably get in next year because of this. It's kind of like baseball. Oh, Pete Rose died. Okay, we'll reinstate you now. Like, so he's not going to get to see it. His family will. I was actually surprised when I was going through, his accolades and how great of a player he was. The Iron Man status of the 282 games, that he was only a Pro Bowler twice. That kind of shocked me.
That's crazy. And he should just get in just for that Iron Man record he held for so long. Maybe that's what he should be getting in there for. And it's ridiculous.
And it's not like he wasn't hurt. He was definitely hurt. He was just playing through injuries.
That's a good point. Well, rest in peace, Jim Marshall. I'm sure we'll be wearing a patch this year, or we better be.